hello. As I was just saying then, I think I've met everyone here, but for those who I haven't met, Richard McKeand, one of the brand ambassadors for Mackmyra in the UK, and they also now are Richard Foster in the house. Hang on, admit. Richard in. Hello, Rich. I think since October last year, I also do another role where I look after all the area sales for everything south of Nottingham too, which is made my role a lot more filled up with admin than it was the first 6 months, where I was just doing tastings and sampling things and writing notes and stuff. So, but very much enjoying it. Thank you to Anthony and Nick for putting this. Anthony and Nick for putting this together, and everyone else who's been involved in all the charity work that you guys have been doing. And obviously, this tasting is in aid to raise some money for that as well. So I think the other Nick I know has had quite a lot of involvement in it, and I'm sure there are others in the screen here tonight that have done a lot to help as well. So thank you all very much. If I could just have, I'll say a show of hands for now. But at any point someone wants to come off of mute, any stage during the tasting, please do. But feel free to write, questions that you might have in the comments, and I'll ask Ant and Nick to keep an eye on them. But if you want to just come off mute, really not fussed whatsoever. I think we're all friends here. It'd be nice to have a chat rather than it just be me on my own here, delivering monologue after monologue. So. Yeah, I think so. A show of hands is saying. I've got a bit of background noise from somebody here who might have come off with you. I think Andy and Hells, I think that's it. Yeah, lovely. Cheers, guys. Where was I there? We've take it back to 2 steps. I say that's it. A show of hands, please. Anyone who's done a Mackmyra tasting before? Yeah, a few people. Anyone who hasn't tried Mackmyra? Okay, Charlie, have you not tried Mackmyra yet? Have I not sent you anything? Or
Richard, I'm a bit embarrassed by admitting it, but no, I haven't tasted Mackmyra, and it's even my neighbor country. Yeah,
right. Well, we'll obviously put a change to that this evening. I'm sure that somebody sent you a few beard oil samples, so we'll probably be doing.
We'll see if we're good friends afterwards then.
Cool. So lineup wise, I think you've probably seen the picture that these guys put together. I thought it looked great. We'll be going, if anyone's seen that picture, in the same order, but we'll put the Svensk Ek Amerikansk Ek to the end. So we're going to go Svensk Ek, Huurdated, which is Skuurdated. So that's the Amarone wine seasonal. Then the Caribbean, the Moment Range Caribbean, then the Prestige, and then the Svensk Ek Amerikansk Yak we'll be finishing on. So I think what I do have, I think we'll be starting with the Svensk Ek. Don't go through it too quickly just yet, because I've got about probably 5 or 6 minutes of Mackmyra presentation that I can go through with everyone, just so that we can all have a bit of history, learn a little bit about the founders and how everything came about as well. But I'll try and go through that as quickly as possible without rushing it too much, just so that we can get stuck in to the rest. Here we go. Another person here. I'm not sure how to go full screen without not being able to then see anyone at all on here. Will this do? Can people see this picture well enough? Yeah. I'll practice this part of it. Okay, so Mackmyra. This is probably the coolest Mackmyra, just sort of basic picture I could find. This is the lineup that we have. So Svensk Ek, Huurdated, Amerikansk Ek, Caribbean, Prestige, all in that order, but the Svensk Ek at the end. I'll start off with Mackmyra and where it is. Mackmyra is a place. It's not just a company trying to sound Scottish. Mackmyra is an actual place where one of the 8 founding members was from. It's right next to this town here called Yavla, population about 100,000 or so, and Mackmyra Distillery and the village is right on the western border of the town, basically, just where a big forest begins. You can see it on a map here on the left. It's about an hour and a half north of Stockholm. on the train. Gävle is famous in Sweden for its Gävle goat, which gets built around Christmas time. This big, 25-foot straw goat. Just put that in there for a bit of colour. 1998 was when this picture was taken. That's when our 8 founding members, who had all been friends at university. I think I've got, sorry guys, some rattle static coming through from somebody. If you think that might be you, please could you pop yourself on mute just for this bit, please. Let's see. Still having a bit there. Okay, I think that might be better. Oh, that was it. Still there. I think I'm still getting a bit of it, so I'll just say, Ant and Nick, if you can see who that might be, please could you perhaps send them a message if they haven't got me on
I think it's Omar's got his mic on.
Okay. I could only see 4 people, I think, yeah.
Omar, he's the only one with his mic on now, so it might be him. Can you mute Omar from your end, Rich?
How would I go about this?
Click on participants.
Okay.
Go down to him and you'll see his microphone. That's it. Go on now.
Yeah, so I'm not too fussed. I'm not too fussed about the noise thing, but I know that having been on lots of tastings myself, it's really annoying when you're trying to hear something and you can't in the background. So yeah, here we go. So 1998, the idea for Mackmyra came about. 8 founding members on a skiing trip. They'd gone away a few years in a row, and this fateful year had all brought a bottle of whiskey along with each other. Not planned, and then somebody said at some point, why is nobody making whiskey in Sweden? There's a big appetite for it there. There's an enormous amount of whiskey geeks, very technical focused whiskey fans in Sweden. So they said, why is nobody doing it? Let's go and do it ourselves. They set about learning how to do things. They were engineers. They were not brewers. They were not distillers. They had no experience amongst them. But they did have a bit of wherewithal and like getting their hands dirty and making things. So what we can see here is the first ever still that we used. We used this for the first 3 years on 100-litre size. And from it, we took a 30-litre cut. And you can see that being welded on the right-hand side there. This is the first cask that was ever filled. So December the 18th, I think, is when the first distillation took place. And a small part of this cask was filled, I should say, because we only took 30 litres of it. But by the end of 1999, that probably would have been filled to the top, and then the next few as well, hopefully. When we started out, the founders wanted everything to be Swedish. They saw it as their responsibility, being the first people to make single malt whiskey in Sweden, that they should try their best to set precedents where they could, and to try and establish what a Swedish blueprint, I guess, for making whiskey would be. One of the areas where they saw that they could do that was by using only Swedish ingredients. Here we can see the 4 elements that go into it. So kronjast, my pronunciation of it, but that's the top left. That's the yeast that we use. It's a Swedish baker's yeast. Is often used in making sweet breads and pastries. Slow acting when it comes to fermentation, so you need really long fermentation times to get the achieved results. Top right, you can just about see some water over the rocks there. We use water for, I think, the Valbossen, again, my pronunciation, a big sort of aquifer underneath the land where Mackmyra is. Bottom left, that's our barley. We use a 2-row barley called tipple, which is used by brewers all across it, in many parts at least of Europe. And then on the right-hand side, the bottom right, you can see some peat there. So 2 little bits of peat being held. And above that, juniper twigs, because when we get to Svensk Amerikansk, the peated one that we have today, I'll talk more about that. But we use dried juniper branches and juniper twigs in the peating process. Something that they thought would put, and does, a Swedish stamp on things. There's thousands of years of history involved in that. I'll expand when we get to that dram. We've been in probably 3 or 4 different locations since starting in 99. The first 2, maybe even more than that, were a series of our founders' gardens, basically, which we can see across the top 3 pictures here. We malt and peat our own barley for our peated whiskey. I said about them using Swedish ingredients. They weren't able to get any peated barley made in Sweden because nobody was making it at the time. We get all of our barley malted, at a place near Gothenburg, Viking Maltings, but they didn't do anything about peating. So the first few maltings that we needed for the peated whiskey they were making, they had to go to Gothenburg, fill up loads of wheelbarrows full of the green malt, finely malted barley, and then bring it back to be smoked in the gardens. And had a neighbour complain, which is why they had to move to locale. So the middle picture at the top, you can see that's where it ended up. But one of the lucky founders lives near the coast and took on the responsibility of having the production for things there. Bottom left, Brooks Distillery. And the bottom right, you can just see behind the trees there and behind the visitor centre and offices, the Gravity Distillery, where we are now. This is the Brooks Distillery from the front, and probably what many of us, at least in the UK, assume Sweden looks like all the time. This is the first proper still that we had. So when we moved to the Brooks Distillery in 2002, we retired the homemade still you can see on the left and brought two Forsyth stills in from Scotland. This is another picture of the distillery just from above, some stables in the background and a residential area around there. This is the Gravity Distillery where we moved into in 2012. This will be probably, more than likely our forever home. We will be there for some considerable time. I can't imagine them moving for decades to come. I'll expand on this a little bit as we go with some of the drams, but the two big silos you see on the right hand side, one will be filled with unpeated barley, the other will be filled with peated barley. It takes it to the top, and what we can see here is a cross section of the distillery. The very top floor is the sky bar. The next floor down is where cleaning happens and sieving will happen. Next floor, sort of milling, then mashing, then fermentation, and then you can see the stills and the fermentation tanks on the right hand side, and then the bottom floor, the new make spirit store. Basically, we saved about, I think you can see some of it there. The English on this slide is terrible, by the way, so I'll move on from it before everyone can read any of it. But we saved 45% energy from when compared to our production at the Brooks Distillery, which is absolutely massive. That is like enormous numbers if you talk about how much you're saving in terms of your carbon footprint and everything as well. So it's not just gravity that is utilized there. We have a self-contained sort of power system. You can see the power plant on the left-hand side there with this big chimney coming out of it. Purely functional. There's nothing pretty about it. It's just a big shipping container, which you'll see a few of them dotted around the distillery. That is run on powered by bio pellets, which are draff. So instead of these, I will say, fictional happy cows that you hear about when you go on distillery tours in Scotland, even though the draff that they are fed is not alcoholic whatsoever. The cows are only happy because they're being fed. Our draff, instead of going off to feed, gets sent off to a plant where it's turned into bio pellets and biofuel that comes back to us to then power the distillery further. We also have like a heat and capture system for anywhere where we create heat, that it heats up water around it that then gets taken off to either heat other parts of the distillery or to go and assist in other parts of the production process. We have been we have a number of different warehouses all around Sweden, I think one or two in Germany. The most famous of which, this is the entrance to the Bodas mines. I think not everybody put their hand up earlier to say that they tried Mackmyra, but I dare say that this is something that whether or not you've had it before, you'd have heard talk about this at least, because it's something that we do talk about quite a lot. I've got a video I can show you, everyone, of that as well, of the drive down into it and then walking around the casks. That's the mine shaft entrance on the left. There's some casks that are stored down there on the right. This is one of 10 rooms similar in size to one another that we have down there. One will be filled with ex-bourbon, one will be the spiced room, because that will be New American oak and Swedish oak, and then one will be the sherries and things like that. This is the reason why we have the Bodas mine. So juxtaposed there, my word of the day, two pictures. You can see the warehouse on the right, underground, and 50 meters below ground, I should say. And then the reason we need that is the Swedish climate. Basically, we all know about hotter climates and how that can make whiskey mature and develop more quickly. It goes the opposite way, of course, when you have something in colder climates. It makes it take a lot longer. So having something underground, I thought was quite smart. Some of the other warehouses that we have that I'm not sure many people would have heard of, but I think this one I think is awesome, and actually the next one to follow too. So this is Lofsdalen Sky Bar and Warehouse. You can see it's up on top of a mountain. It's a few thousand feet up in the air. You can see the bottom left picture is what it looks like inside on its sort of entry floor. You can go there, you can have a drink, you can have a coffee, you can have a small nibble bite to eat. And on the right hand side, if the pictures for Zoom aren't blocking out too much of it, you can see a warehouse basically that it is underneath that bar. So 30-litre casks, if you happen to own one of those, whether on your own or through a club or whatever it might be, you can choose to have it stored up there so that you can go and visit it. And obviously the altitude and everything has another influence on how things will mature as well. One of the other more interesting locations for it, Fjärde Holmarna, there or thereabouts is how that's said, in Stockholm, on the archipelago, which is another word that I've had to learn how to pronounce recently, of Stockholm. This is an island that was, that for one point at least, the last line of defence for Sweden and Stockholm, the city of. And where we have our warehouse there is another underground one, but just underground under a big sort of rock part of that island. This was an old munitions store where the Navy stored torpedoes for a very long time, and now it stores our casks of whiskey, and another place where you can choose to have your cask matured. This is Angela Dorazio. She is our master blender. Her official title is Chief Nose Officer, because the founders didn't think that master blender was jazzy enough, I suppose. But so that her official title is Chief Nose Officer. Second woman to be admitted into the Whiskey Magazine Hall of Fame. She is responsible for every whiskey that we're trying this evening, and I think her first bottling for us was the third in the Preludium series, which were the first whiskies that we ever released. But she had a hand in the first two as well, as almost sort of as a consultant before coming on full time with us in 2005, 2006, I think. We've got three ranges, and these are the last few slides. We've got three ranges that we have. The core range we can see here. The Svensk Ek is the one that we're trying of that this evening. We've got the seasonal range. These are whiskies that come out twice a year. There'll be a limited edition, although not necessarily highly limited in their number. There'll be anywhere from 15 to 20,000 bottles for each. One will come out spring, summer. One will come out autumn, winter. And these are supposed to have or showcase and retain our spirit character, but showcasing it in ways that sort of fit with whichever season they've come out with. So whereas the moment range, which is our sort of our top range, anywhere beyond or before buying a cask or getting single cask bottles and things, this is something that this range is more about showcasing the effects of wood, as opposed to trying to present our spirit character in different ways. And that's it. I think that's it for now. So we'll get into the Svensk Ek, 46.1% ABV. If you have a look on Mackmyra.com, and this is the last one I'll show of this for now, you'll be able to see product sheets of ours. I think on Mackmyra.co.uk it should have them too, where the shop is. And you'll be able to see the cask recipe that goes into things. So on the top right part of that, at least where the writing is, you can see it says casks, hopefully if your screen's large enough. And it says Swedish oak and ex-bourbon casks have gone into the making of this. And I'll stop that now. Hang on. Something's gone. There we go. Right. I think that's the quickest I've ever managed to do that first part of it. And I know that's probably still closer to 10 minutes than the 5 I said it might be, and the rest perhaps. But that is, I think that's us there's so much more to expand on those individual points and things, but that's us, our like sort of 20-year history in a nutshell. That's about as far down as I could get it. I expect everyone's probably had a good go, if not, hopefully not finished, the Svensk Ek. It didn't take too long, but nose-wise, is there anything jumping out of the glass at anyone, or is there anything that anyone wants to ask about any of that stuff that I just went through?
May I ask, is there peat in this one?
There's no peated whiskey in it, no, but if you can find smoke,
Yes.
that would be, so the Swedish oak casks that are used in this are heavily charred to level 4 char.
That was the first note that jumped out at me.
Okay. Well, I need to pour myself one, actually. I should have done that at the beginning. I said the cask recipe for this, Svensk Ek, I should probably say, means Swedish oak. And this is our probably flagship, I think, of the core range. And the one that Angela, when people ask which whiskies would you try to be able to sort of learn a bit about Mackmyra's spirit character, or about our sort of DNA character, distillery character, Svensk Ek and Svensk Amerikansk Ek that we're having at the end are the two that Angela mentioned. Reason being, so this one is called Swedish oak, but only 10% of the casks used in this recipe were Swedish oak casks. So all of it is ex-bourbon. It'll be a mix of first and second fill ex-bourbon casks. We never use ex-bourbon casks more than twice. We only ever use them for first and second fill. All of it was matured in there. And then for the final 18 months of its life, 10% of that liquid is transferred into Swedish oak casks. So our spirit character with this, that you sort of, and I think we all know now that ex-bourbon or refill bourbon is probably the best way of working out what a distillate will be like. So with this, hopefully people might be finding things like fruits, some herbaceous notes, perhaps orchard fruits, and little bits of spice and things, and that really is turned up almost to 11, I think, with the inclusion of Swedish oak, at least as far as spice goes.
Smells a bit like Jägermeister.
Right? Yeah, I'll take that. I'll take that
in a good way. In a good way.
Well, so Jägermeister to me, sort of like that's quite a herbal, spicy, sort of warming, spicy thing.
Yeah.
So
kind of, like sort of Germanic herb bundles.
Yeah, I have that for sure. Has anyone here tried our new make spirit?
Yes, more than a few times.
Oh, Mick definitely has, because I came and did something on Twitter with.
You did, yeah. It's funny because I've got a bottle of Vec actually, and I haven't had it in a little while, and I've just started drinking this, and I'm getting strawberries, which I get on the new make, and I don't remember getting it on my bottle when I first opened it. That's really strange. I mean, there is that, foresty kind of thing going on, but yeah, definitely strawberries.
So it's interesting you find strawberries, because I find strawberries in our new make, just a little bit of them, but it's such a delicate note. That,
it is very light, but it's definitely in there. I've not had that before. It's really, really nice.
Interesting you are. I wonder what you've eaten today, if it's just quite plain fare, perhaps, and nothing too spicy, because I've not been able to find strawberries in this, and I always thought that's because the Swedish oak just sort of was so influential, it just wiped that delicacy.
Strong. No, I'm definitely getting it. It's nice.
Our new make, then, I was asking about that there because I mentioned orchard fruits a moment ago. Our new make would be heaps of like fresh pear, green apple, a little bit of red apple, for example, as well, and then often a little bit of banana, so some tropical-ish notes to it. But with this, with Svensk Ek, with Swedish oak, and the inclusion of people that might have heard me say this before, because I tend to say it on any time I'm talking about this one, really. But I feel that the Swedish oak side has almost like a cooking effect on those fruits, those fresh fruits that I find in the new make. So with this, if you can find apple, to me, this is now like apple pie. Like baked apple, and some cinnamon, perhaps some sort of like sweet spices coming in, and then caramelized pear or baked pear again, and browned baked banana. I think if anybody can ever get hold of any, our I think Mick, what you've tried the Vithund, haven't you as well? Yeah. So we sell our new make by the bottle at 46.1% ABV. You'll be able to find that in a handful of places in the world, but from us directly.
It is worth trying. I mean, I've tried a dozen new makes now, and it is one of the better ones, to be honest.
Yeah. Is anybody here keen on making cocktails, or does anyone ever make a long drink for themselves? Yeah. So Vithund as a base or as an element in a cocktail works really, really, really well. You've got a lot of that maltiness there to it that can help add a bit of texture to the cocktail that you're making, but not too malty. I think it's far more sort of fruit forward than it is malt forward.
In the comments, Richard, echoing your notes, to be honest, fruits, apple strudel, all that kind of thing, spices. A couple of people not getting strawberry, some others are. So yeah, it's very very similar to what you're all saying, to be honest.
Oh yeah, I've just seen Luna say strawberries. Yeah, so yeah. Anything?
Can I ask a question?
Yes, please.
If you said it's only 10% Swedish oak, is Swedish oak too spicy or too?
Yeah.
So what kind of flavors do you usually get from Swedish oak?
Heaps of spice. Heaps of spice. So, I've got and if I may, I've got a few little pictures I can show of Swedish oak and its history and just a few, but it's far too high in things like tannins and spices basically. So we air dry our staves for it for 2 years rather than kiln dry them, because you need to flush away the tannins that are there, and even after that there's still so much left to it. Anything more than 10% would sort of overpower, become too woody. It would become too much. But I'll show you some bits I've got here. I'm sure there's a way I can make this look better. Oh, I can do this, and I could have done that the whole time. I thought that was going to stop me from being able to see people on the right hand side. Okay, right. Well, should we go from the top? No, we won't do it. I'll start. So, this is bloody useless on mine already, because all the pictures are covering up this tree on the right hand side. So Swedish oak, believe it or not, what you're looking at here are oak trees. In 1830, there was a decree from high command of Sweden saying we need to plant more oak trees for the future of Sweden's empire, for commerce, for wars, for anything, just for building ships and being able to sail around the world. Oak trees have grown, native in Sweden, in the southern parts of it, for just as long as there's been any oak in France and northern parts of Belgium and wherever they might be. But the further north you go in Sweden, the fewer oak trees you're going to see, until you come across none at all. In 1830, this decree was made. So they set about planting hundreds and hundreds of thousands of oak trees. They found for the perfect place for them. They found was in Lake Vättern, an island in Lake Vättern, where you can see this marker showing here. And just to the south of where the marker actually is, above the P of the word that I'm not going to try and pronounce, is the island itself. Visingsö, this island in the southern part of that lake. They planted hundreds of thousands of trees on this island, and to make them grow, and this is quite ingenious, to make them grow and be as much as possible, the highest yield as possible, that would be good for making ships with, where you need tall, straight trees with as few branches and knots and things as possible. They engineered a way of doing it. So they planted all the trees in rows, and in between those trees, they had elm trees and birch trees and things planted as well, to encourage the oak to grow as tall and straight as it could, to try and reach the sun and get above the trees that were either side of it. That's smart. I think if anyone knows much about things like Mizunara, Japanese oak, and how incredibly difficult it is to find trees that you're able to make hasts from, because they're so short and spindly and all over the place, and all these branches and things. Same as Scottish oak as well. You know, just really difficult to find anything suitable for. I think this is very, very clever indeed. Have I got anything else after this? Yeah. So this is these are some 30-litre Swedish oak casks being made because they grow so slowly in Sweden. I was mentioning to Luna then, you know, it's so filled with tannins. I think they've got 10 times fewer wood sugars and lignins and things than an American oak might have, generally speaking. So we air dry them for 2 years, and then they get coopered into casks. This is David Anderson. He is our cooper. It's his own company. I think he's second or third generation, and he makes anywhere from 2 to 3 casks a day because of how hard it is to make a 30-litre cask from straight wood. Most of the 30-litre ex-bourbon casks we have are just normal ex-bourbon staves. We've chopped the ends off, and you've got that bend already there. But here we've got to manipulate it into smaller bits. What we can see here on the left-hand side will be, I'm not exactly sure where this will be, but I assume somewhere in America where they need to make heavily charred barrels very quickly and in mass numbers. But this is how we do it. This is how David does it. So instead of 5 things at a time being charred for a minute or whatever it might be, David fills the inside of these casks with wood shavings that he's just built up throughout the day, and sets fire to it. And that, I mean, Mickey, my colleague, who I think a few people here will have met or come across, these are his favourite pictures. He can't get enough of them. And that's it. That's just a nice shot to finish the Swedish oak story on. But it goes. There's more to it, that tale. So in 1830 they started planting all these trees. It takes 150. Oh, sorry, Mick, that was a rather loud one. Do you mind if I ask you? That's all good. No worries. It takes 150. No, you're all right. You're all right, Mick. 150 to 180 years, perhaps, for certain types of oak tree to grow, depending on what climate they're in. So they planted these trees in 1830, and they're going to be ready a century and a half later. But if anyone knows anything about naval history, I think the first ironclad ship, I think the French built the first, around 1860, give or take. And then there were 2 ironclad vessels fighting in the American Civil War between 1860 and 1865. So only 30 years after they planted hundreds of thousands of trees, the technology had begun to become obsolete. So you just ended up with hundreds and hundreds of thousands of oak trees being planted, probably not just in Sweden, in all sorts of parts of the world, but these in particular. And it was, I always thought that was quite amusing, and for the betterment of the environment, of course, and humanity in turn. But yeah, so on that island, there's 5 generations of the same family have been tasked with maintaining those oak forests and looking for the trees that are the right ones to be felled. And there's a huge amount of history and heritage attached to it. Oh, and I suppose in a relatively short amount of time, but when you say 5 generations of anything, I think that sounds, I don't know, quite interesting, quite grand a thing as well. So does anyone have any questions about svensk or Swedish oak? I'm sure we're probably more or less ready to move into dram number 2.
I just found it interesting that it's like the 10% Swedish oak. Look, that's more than enough, and it is like it works well. Because the first time I ever bought a bottle of it, you go Swedish oak. You when you just see the label or you just see that, you maybe assume that it's going to be 100% Swedish oak. You see it's only 10%. Maybe a little bit played down on it. Well, it's not going to be that big an impact, but it really, really is. It is. You're clearly entirely different from just a virgin oak for 10% of it, or ex-bourbon or whatever. It's clearly unique.
Yeah, there's definitely bits to it that I haven't sort of found in other whiskies, and I've had the good fortune of being able to try quite a high number now of single cask whiskey of ours that are just ex-bourbon, and then others that are just Swedish oak. And the same distillate, they'd have been in the same warehouse. They'd be sister casks to one another in location. Relatively same maturation periods and things as well. Even though Swedish oak cooks it very much more quickly than bourbon would. But yeah, the differences are stark. If you had a single cask of Swedish oak, our 30-litre cask, that would be ready in 3.5 years. You've got to catch that quite quickly. I think some of them might take a little bit longer, but on average about that. Whereas a 30-litre ex-bourbon of ours, anywhere sort of between 5 and 6 years would be around about the sort of sweet spot for it.
Richard, can I ask a quick question before we move on?
Yes.
On the box of this one, you actually state that it's non-chill filtered and uncoloured.
Yes. Yeah.
I couldn't find. Was it a conscious issue to not put that on other boxes because we couldn't find that info on some of the others? So is it
on the front or?
Yeah, it's on the orange. It's on the Sphinx Ek box.
It's a smaller box, so it's like
But
maybe it's a first.
we had a look at some of the other ones that we've got here, and it doesn't mention it on those boxes. We were just wondering if there's a reason why you chose not to put that on there, or
I don't know. Do you know what? I've never noticed. I think if I'll read the back of the boxes just real quickly because I've never noticed that. It probably should be there because it's an important thing for I think everybody in this room at least this evening. Whether or not I think we've all had whiskies that have been chill filtered or our colouring in that we enjoy, but I think we all much prefer it when we find something that hasn't had either of those two things happen. Everything that we're trying this evening hasn't been chill filtered and hasn't been has had no colouring added to it. So it probably should be on the box, but no, maybe I'll let them know and I'll see if I can.
It was. I'm only asking because, like I said to you before we started, we recorded our review today, and obviously we only had that box at the time, and it doesn't mention it on there. So we just said like we weren't sure if it was uncoloured or unchill filtered because the information wasn't on there. But obviously, then we looked at the Sphinx X box. And it actually states it, but it was just something we couldn't get the info on yet.
No, I mean it should. Hopefully online there might be something about it. I mentioned our product sheets that you can look at. I would hope there was something sort of mentioned there because it is something that people ask more and more often about now.
At the moment.
But thanks for alerting me to that, maybe because that's something that's worth putting on, especially in the world where. As much as I absolutely love the stuff, when Glendronach are moving perhaps in the other direction, people are becoming more and more aware of chill filtration and colouring and things. So not that they weren't already, but ever more so because they've just added fuel to the fire of that debate. So okay, all right. Well, if everyone's happy, we'll move on to the Huerdeted, Scordeted. If you say it as I did for the first probably 7 or 8 months of my job here. Until we had, if anyone's come across Swedish Whiskey Girl on Instagram or Twitter, Moa Nilsson, she came along and did a live show with us a little while ago and schooled my colleague Mick and I on how to pronounce a lot of our whiskies because we have been saying many of them incorrectly, including Svensk Ek, which I think I've called Svensk Ek 15 times this evening, but it's actually more like Svensk Ek, or like an EAK perhaps, or close to that. So even the easy ones are challenging, I'll say. Huerdeted is probably the most unexpected pronunciation for the native Brits here, at least, because I appreciate we have people from various countries that can't believe that we can't get that simple thing right. So Huerdeted, harvest time, it translates to. Harvest in this instance is relating to the harvest of grapes, basically, because we've made this one where the vast majority of this has spent time in Massey Amarone wine casks. So has anyone tried Amarone wine? Few people, a few people about. So Amarone wine is sort of a sweet wine. Massey are from northern Italy. It's somewhere between red wine and port. And I'm looking at Luna's nodding, so I think that sounds about right to me there. Yeah, so it's somewhere between sort of red wine and port in terms of sweetness and body and things. And Massey, I have to admit, I knew nothing about Amarone wine before this whiskey. The only things I know I've learned since trying this one. But Amarone wine is, I think, is very popular in Sweden in particular. They like it very much. And Massey in terms of a producer of it. There might be someone that can say there are other people out there that sell more bottles or whatever, but Massey are right up there with the most popular producers of them. Also, I'm led to believe by sources whom I trust.
Is Amarone the one where you get the basic and then you get the Ripasso, and then it's like there's like different stages, and they use the casks again and again,
if you like. I'm sorry, if you know that, if that was a question, I'll try and answer. But if that was you making a statement and trying to frame it as a question, I would. I
was then going to ask, do you know which stage of cask this is from? But as you didn't know that was a thing, then let's all just play stupid and carry on.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thank you very much. So so I know that there's 600 litre casks that were the wine cask for this, which is quite. I know very little about wine. I think most of us here will know about cask sizes for whiskey. Not really many 600 litres and things being used. So I think it's just quite interesting that there's another size all of a sudden in the mix. I've got just not a big slideshow or anything here, but just a couple of pictures just to give you guys a visual of the bottles. Here we go. So that's it. So that's the bottle you've got there on the right. The Massey bottles you can see here on the left. You see their logo above it. It's not quite their logo. It's actually ours and in collaboration with them. You can see that on the upper right hand corner of the box of the whiskey box itself. Massey really they loved it. They absolutely loved it when Angela presented them with some samples and things, and they wanted their name on the box front and center. And when we come back to the full camera view, I'll show you they've even got their name in lights basically on the back of the bottle as well, which I think is quite I don't know, for want of a better term, quite cool, because you hear quite often about distilleries not being able to say where they've got certain casks from and that sort of thing, even if they've got a direct relationship with them. But in this case, and in things like the Apple Bloom, they really wanted to be a public spectacle that they were working in partnership with them, because they were so happy with the product itself. This is the top 2/3 of the product sheet for it. Again, 46.1% ABV, non-chill filtered, no added colouring. You can see in the top right hand side of the writing, primary casks, first fill ex Massey Costa Sera Amarone wine, first fill ex bourbon, first fill Oloroso. And then in smaller volumes, some other influential casks being first fill American oak, which had been treated and seasoned by us with PX sherry, and then first fill 30 litre Mackmyra reserve casks. And they see there Mackmyra hooded harvest, and that's it. So this is Massey over on the left, and if you look on the right hand side, it's just the wine producing regional map of Italy. Massey is the top, Amarone and things in the top orange section that we can see on the map there, and then it shows you exactly where Massey itself is based. Angela D'Orazio I mentioned earlier. I think most of us will know. Well, that's on to the next. Is half Italian, half Swedish, and she's been drinking Massey wine for years and years, and wanted to work with them for quite a long time. So when the opportunity came about, was very excited to do so. Whew, right. Anyone have any thoughts, questions, anything like that? I'm going to have a sip of my whiskey and see if anyone's got anything.
That's quite interesting, especially like having tried the Amarone red wine, Amarone cask finish. I'm not overly keen on the Amarone finish. Something it's for me like a bit more tannic, a bit more bitter, and I'm not as into it. But this is a lot. It's got a bit of spice. It's got a bit more sweetness to it that I'm really enjoying.
Oh, nice! Yeah, good to hear. I think that there's sweetness from the wine. I think that some of those that first fill American oak that we've seasoned with PX sherry as well will probably help in adding some of that sweetness to it as well. and take away, you know, any sort of potentially overly tannic or dry notes that you might get from the red side of things.
Rich, one of the great kind of comments that I can see at the moment is that it was like a mint choc ice cream.
That one.
That was from Ben, Whiskey with Molly. That was a good shout. Can't actually find the comment now, but and now I was picking up mint. Mint seems to be quite a strong note on this one for everyone. Ginger cookies, bitter chocolate notes, red fruits, and Richard's give a lot of information on the Amarone as well. So yeah, what's going on in the chat about this one?
Yeah, cool. So this, when I joined Mackmyra February 2020, my second ever shift was a tasting at Milroy's. And when I was on the way in, I was texting Shane Peary, who's our sort of UK manager, and I was telling him sort of, you know, whiskies I liked, and he said, "Oh, you know, we're trying the hooded tid this evening. I think you're going to love that." And yeah, and when I got there, I tried it. I was, you know, shadowing him. He was obviously doing all the work. I was just sitting there helping pour things. I tried it. I love this. I love, generally speaking, whiskey with sort of red wine influence to it. I've had a few that have been, you know, gone a bit too far down sort of, you know, become a bit one-dimensional perhaps. But I love like the texture and the richness and the sort of the full flavors that you get with anything sort of, you know, red wine in particular. Base peated red wine cask whiskies, I think, are probably my like almost favorite grouping of things. Yeah, so I bought a bottle of this that night from Milroy's while I was there, and I think this might be, I think, the second bottle I have now, and this has remained as one of my favourite seasonals, if not my favourite seasonal since started, at least of the ones that I've tried thus far. Cheers. Which is why I think I wanted to put it in this tasting tonight, because Ant, you and I spoke, I think, what was it, like 2 or 3 months ago almost, about this. If you're talking to me, you're on mute, by the way, I'll say, but we spent a bit of time putting
Yes.
yeah, that's it. Yes, in that. Yeah, cool. Yeah, confirmed. But most of the whiskies that we've got in the lineup this evening are ones where are ones that I just either really like or I thought would be good to put in. And also, you and I spoke at detail again about not wanting to have too many in there that people would have tried before, because we've been so active doing virtual tastings, doing our own live shows and streams and things, and then, you know, doing, you know, things with clubs. Because I think everybody in here this evening is member of at least this one, obviously, but probably another handful or more at least in every case. So there's quite a high chance of us doubling up on things. We're trying very much to avoid doing that. So this is one of the ones that was put in because I like drinking it. So I thought I'd have it in the mix.
I've not tried it before, I must admit.
Yeah, you've tried fewer than I thought you had, Mick, because I think you've only tried maybe 4 or 5 now or something, right?
And now I've looked in my book and I'm up to 11.
Oh, okay, big jump.
So yeah, it's probably the most I've ever tried, actually. Yeah, funny enough, very nice.
Yeah, cool. Well, you can add a few more to that this evening then.
Yeah.
Finish wise, anyone having any sort of particular notes on the finish, or anything that's that they enjoy and they're not sure of? Or
No, very nice. I'm getting dark chocolate cigar leaves, black licorice.
Absolutely agree with everything.
Richard, Luna asked how long it stays in the Amarone casks for.
Yeah, so 6 months. 6 months. The majority, or a very large part of the whiskey that's in here, has gone into Amarone cask for 6 months. So I've still not quite worked out how to classify or how to describe certain whiskies of ours, because you can't quite call it an Amarone finish in this case. And with the Birch Sap whiskey that's just come out, you can't quite call it a Birch Sap finish, because there's casks of whiskey have gone into these particular ones, and most of the seasonals, in fact, that have not spent any time, or liquid that's not spent any time in the the title casks, whatever it is. So it's not quite, we've taken a load of ex-bourbon casks and put all of them into Oloroso for 3 months or 2 years, and that's therefore a finish. These are sort of quite complex cask recipes that have been built and put together by Angela to try and achieve balance, or whatever profile she's trying to achieve. So you can't just put all of them in one. So if anyone's got any suggestions for something that isn't a finish, something that because it is basically that's the easiest way of describing it, but it's not quite right. So I'm always sort of quite reluctant to say this is a finish of this or a finish of that, because it's not accurate enough for me. However, when I'm feeling lazy, I just do, because it's easy.
No, this came up on Twitter. Nobody had a general consensus for it back then either, to be honest.
Yeah,
but you're right, it's not a finish, so it needs a new classification, I reckon. Yeah,
something in it, because we're quite like, I've equated us recently to Compass Box, in that Compass Box are like a flavour-led operation. We're very much the same, but because all of it's from one distillery, we're a single malt, right? Whereas they're either blended whiskey or blended malt, but they get casks of all different types and sizes and from wherever they come from to achieve a finer result. We do the same thing, but with our own stuff. So there aren't many whiskies of ours where only 1 or 2 cask types have been used. There really aren't. I think that the vast majority, especially with the seasonal whiskies, they're anywhere from 3 to 7 casks used. Vinterglod was impossible. Vinterglod, if you look at our, which is where we had mulled wine finished, if you will, whiskey. If you look at the product sheet for it, it's got lots of different cask types there. But then when we had our training on it with Angela on Teams some time ago, there was probably about another 4 or 5 types of things that she had in there. Just 2 casks of this and 5 casks of that. Because the list had already become too long. I guess they just didn't put everything on there because there was just other sort of subtle things in there. But very complex cask recipes that she uses.
I think the only way I could think to really describe Bloom is like almost a cask highlight. It's
that's not a bad shout. That's definitely the right sort of path.
Yeah, it's not everything about it, but this is what we're trying to showcase.
Yeah. So I say this isn't the answer I was looking for, because I'm still. But I say the influential casks, the key influential casks in this whiskey were Massey Amarone wines, or Amarone wine casks, because that's what they are. But it's not. It's still very much in a roundabout way. I'm looking for like a word or two I can use in lieu of finished, basically. Yeah. But I think that highlighted of something. I think that's where we're going in the right direction with that. I might just make a mental note of that one, actually, Jay. Thank you.
No worries.
Cool. Does anyone else have any more questions, thoughts, feelings about this before we move on?
I'd like to ask Jay if he wants any help copywriting. Some money to be made here, Jay. Yeah. Contact my DM, mate.
Right, well, then without much further ado, shall we move into the Caribbean? Have to bear with me 2 secs. So I've got.
I'm looking forward to this one because I haven't tried this, and I like a sort of rum thingy to them, but some of them are quite different and very light.
I can't get the bottle open at the moment. So hang on a sec. Do we have any?
About 5 minutes to open the first bottle.
Sorry, John.
Took me about 5 minutes to open this first miniature. I was sat here like wrestling with it.
All the sample bottles. I mean, I don't know if it's probably a terrible habit to have, but from Coca-Cola bottles when I was younger, doing it with your teeth. And I remember doing that on the first when we were doing dram swaps and things when lockdown began with people. And I couldn't open certain things. And I was trying to open it, and then you think, well, I can't swap this bottle with anyone else now because it's got all these big teeth marks in the top. So then I've got like 5 or 6 things over there at least that I can't swap with anyone because they look like they've been chewed up. Right, okay, I'm in. Let's get a glass of that port. So we're on now to the moment range. For those who have tried Mackmyra before, been on any tastings or had a dram or two, has anyone tried any of the moment whiskies? I know that Richard's tried some. Yeah, you guys have, and Nick, but no one else. First time for the moments for everyone else, I assume. Then, yeah. Okay. So the moment whiskies, as I said when we were going through the first part, are more about sort of showcasing different types of wood, and by different types of wood, I of course mean oak, but different types of previous content, basically. So this, rather than the seasonal whiskies, being about being able to definitely always find our spirit character there, orchard fruits, herbal notes and spices, but showcasing sort of in slightly different ways. These are much more about what can we do with other types of casks and experimenting as well. You should be able to find, and I said not necessarily everybody in this room with this whiskey, but generally speaking, you should be able to find across any of the moment range, seasonal range, whatever it might be, elements of our spirit character. Like you need to know it's a Mackmyra. There has to be a common thread through them, but they're very much more in line with this one in particular, rum. I took this bottle round to my mum's house some time ago, poured a dram for it. She had no idea that it was, rum cask or rum influenced whiskey and things. And straight away it was, that's a bit rummy, which I thought boded well, because you had sort of fruity esters and like old bananas and things like that I think about when I think of rum. I can get those in heaps on this. Anybody there that would agree or disagree as far as the nose goes?
No, I'd say you're about right, to be honest.
This to me is ripe bananas. The bananas that are going brown, the kind that I would make pancakes with.
Yeah, the ones that should go in the bin.
Nobody would eat, but I quite often make banana pancakes. But so that I would use those ones. The really mushy ones.
Yeah, that's
what that is.
That's what I find when I have rums, half decent rum, you should be able to find that sort of old banana stuff to it. Yeah.
But different to a banana note on a bourbon or something, it is that mushy banana.
Yeah, well, with our Brooks whiskey, anyone that's tried our sort of core range and tastes Brooks whiskey, we always have people say about finding banana in there. And for me, foam banana penny sweets on the Brooks whiskey. So like, sort of a bit sugary, sweet banana. Sort of confectionery type sweetness, whereas this is the other end of the banana's life, very much as it's turning brown and not good for making or for eating, other than baking into something for sure. I've got I think 2 pictures of this just to show you guys what the bottle looks like. So that's the bottle, obviously here on the left, and you can see a big logo sign here for Plantation Rum. The rum casks that we've used for this came from Plantation Rum, namely from the Barbados and Jamaica operations that they have. I think Plantation Rum have either changed their name or in the process of changing their name to try and sort of move away from the connotations that come with plantation. But these are the guys that we've worked with and who make very good rum. What have I got? Another one on here. Yeah, so this is the top 2/3 again of the product sheet. Well, basically, to get it on a screen, I've just cut off the tasting notes and things at the bottom. 44.4% ABV, and you can see it's the aromatic profile. It's being called here. Rum casks of 350 litres inside. Ex-bourbon 200 litre barrels. 128 litre Oloroso casks, and then a handful of 200 litre cherry wine casks. We get our cherry wine casks from a German cherry wine producer called Kirsch. I think if anyone's tried the Shush Bars Rock or Kors Bars Rock, depending how you might say it, or the Moment Effa. I think Richard's tried the Effa. Yeah, that's Swedish birch wine casks and like one cherry wine cask thrown into it. And then down here, I think we've got a statistic here. So yeah, around 75% of the whiskey has been finished in the rum casks, the 350 litre rum casks. Read the last line here. So the whiskey from various casks that make up Moment Caribbean are at least 8 years old and at most 12, and then matured 50 metres below ground in the Bonas mines. 4,137 bottles of this made. All of them come with their individual number on the front, which you can see on the plaque here. So you see you get the batch, the quantity in the batch, and then your individual number will be on there too. Our Moment range and our seasonal range have seen a bit of a rejigging since we had a new CEO take over last August, I think it might have been. And he's bringing a lot of things. We're reducing the sort of the size of our range, dropping a few lines, and then altering the numbers of bottles of certain things that we're doing as well. Where the Moment whiskies go, some of them that we've had before have been 1,100 in number, some have been 4,500 or so. From this point on, and the new one we've got coming out in 4 weeks, they will never exceed 1,900 in their number. So you know, almost half as much as we might have been making before of certain things. Whereas the seasonal whiskies we're increasing in number, so there might be anywhere from 15 to 18,000 of them. From Bjork Sav on, there'll be anywhere from sort of 18 to 22,000, give or take, depending on which one's coming out at that time. So there'll be fewer Moments but more seasonals available.
Any backstory on the rubber band, Richard?
Yeah, right, cool. Thank you very much for that tee up. So one of the things I said about that when the founders started the company, that they're to develop an identity and to set some precedents for making whiskey in Sweden. One of them was just about using Swedish ingredients. So they've gone to great lengths to malt and peat our own barley rather than buy it in from elsewhere, which is absolutely nothing wrong with doing. If you're distilling and maturing whiskey in the country where you are, in my humble opinion at least, that's where the whiskey's from. But they wanted to go next level with that. One of the other things about establishing identity was sustainability, an enormous part of that. Not just of us having a gravity distillery, but there's lots of little smaller details, which to me, I mean, generally speak, just in life, all the small things tend to add up to a lot more than just one big, showy, big ticket thing, such as having a gravity distillery. In this case, some of those smaller details come down to, so the rubber band, or the black, I can tell you now, it's a rubber band that goes around the middle, is made of recycled bicycle tire. There's a cap that, so our capsule, on the top of the whiskey is made of the same material. The reason they do that in Sweden, they recycle, as of I think 2019, the most recent statistics I've seen, they recycle up to 95% of their glass, which is just like massive. If you compare that to what we do is a joke. That's a rabbit hole to go down, of course. But in Sweden, they do 95% of their glass gets recycled. These bottles, the Moment bottles, cost roughly £100. So that's a lot of money to spend on whiskey for most people out there. And if you're anything like me, and I'm sure there'll be people that I'll see nod and agree, sometimes you buy a bottle of whiskey and you just, it runs out. You've got a bit of sentiment attached to it, perhaps, even if it's not just about the pounds and pence that you've spent on it, a moment, a memory that you've had with it. You want to hang on to that bottle. It might turn into a lampshade. It might just gather dust on your shelf, as many of my empties do, with me telling myself I'll do lots of things with them and have not lifted a finger to do any of it so far. But you might want to hold on to these bottles. Now, in Sweden, where obviously our biggest market is, you've got a bit of a moral dilemma there, because, you've spent £100 on something that's a very special whiskey to you, but you come from a culture and you believe yourself as well that recycling this bottle is the best thing to do. So to try and cater to that, the idea they came up with was to have these black rubber bands hold this plaque on the front. So basically you can take, I'll do it without the plaque falling off, You can take the whole thing off. You're left with, you know, a small sticker on the back, but you're left with a plain bottle that can be easily recycled. And instead, so you've got this as sort of half attached, peeled off quite well. Underneath where the black line was, you can see our logo would be, and it just means you're able to then keep the plaque and keep the memory of the whiskey, and you know, and collect it. And even if it's not, you know, about a sentimental thing, even if you just want to have these plaques, you know, a sense of achievement, you've finished another bottle kill, whatever it might be, you're able to then keep that plaque. You know, you can put it on, it's got a bit of a curve to it. But you know, you can put it on a display. You can stack it up high and have it as trading cards. You know, you can do whatever you like with it. But that, to me, that's just, you know, another little sort of small detail that I think feeds in to like a genuine ethos, you know, around sustainability, and like, you know, really wanting to do it.
Could they maybe have the brand ambassadors' faces on the back of it? So we can. I can fancy your face on one, Rich.
That's another bit I'll feed back to the man. I'll say, look, they've had two brilliant ideas today. One's about putting faces on bottles, and the other's about adding the non-chill filtered part of it as well. So you keep them coming. I'll make a note. But I think that's cool. Another sort of, I know this is almost insignificant, but just to back up another sort of one of those small detail things. I found out relatively recently that when we started in '99. They set up a first sort of like members mailing list, you know, shortly into the year 2000. And rather than get a mailing list and then, you know, get everyone's addresses and post bits of material to them at regular or random intervals, they said, no, we're going to make it an email only mailing list, which to us, I think that seems like so, you know, it's not like a big, massive thing to us now, of course, but 20 years ago, you know, plenty of people had computers and email and things then, but it was not like, you know, sort of not the mass adoption and normalcy that it does today. And especially if you're a business, a young business, trying to make sure that you cover as many bases as you can to try and grow your network and get word out there about you. Going for a sort of the vehicle that you use to do that, going to something that's a bit more obscure perhaps and not as sort of as widely adopted as everybody having a letterbox. I think that's something that, you know, that slowed down growth, at least in that area, potentially for a bit, but it meant, you know, that their principles were still in place, and it wasn't just about saying we want to be sustainable. It was a genuine intent, which is really great because I love talking about that side of things. So to have that's, you know, not just like marketing guff and repeating lines about, oh, we do this, we do that, we do the other. There's some real like tangible bits of evidence there to back it up. But yeah, cheers. Anyway, I'll have a sip of this one.
Me the coffee. I'm absolutely getting coffee.
I'll read out a few of the comments, Richard, while you're enjoying your whiskey. Let's have a look. A couple of drops of water takes the edge off, but I have to say I'm not getting much distinct on either nose or palate. Very spicy compared with the others, maybe candied ginger. I'm also getting a faint funk on the finish, like a faint dunnage note. Best of the three so far. Definitely the most interesting so far. Black coffee and black on the back of the palate. Bit too spicy for me for this one. Mackmyra are very focused on sustainability and the environment. Do you think we might see them moving to organic whiskey like some are producing at the moment? From Johnny, that is. So I'll leave that with you, Rich.
That's a good question, Johnny. The honest answer is I don't know. I think we've asked in training before about it, and it's an idea that's being discussed, but I don't know whether or not it's something that I think it's something that we should do. I think it makes sense for us to do it, but you know, just sort of wondering out loud here, if we do it with one and then we don't do it with the rest, you know, would that take away from the rest? But should that then, even that being considered, should that stop you from doing it? I don't know. The question, I think the answer, would be, you know, watch this space, as vague and useless as an answer that might be. You know, let's see. But I think it's a natural direction for us to go. I would say, yeah. We did win. We won Sustainable Distillery of the Year in the Icons of Whiskey Awards, or as Sustainable Distillery of the Year in the Rest of the World category. And I think McKeand, when they bring the two awards together and then say who's won the actual, the top prize, I think McKeand pipped us to the post for that. And I dare say that's got a bit to do with them doing organic whiskey too, to sort of bolster things there and their credibility or credentials with it. Oh. Who else does organic whiskey? I've seen Brookladdy have one, and I'm sure Glendronach or Glengoyne have one.
Ben Ramack have one as well.
I think it's that who I was mistaking for Glendronach. Yeah.
And Deanston, they're kind of water powered, are they not?
I think Deanston, I think I might have seen an organic one.
Yeah, they're a 15-year-old organic, and they've done some like special edition ones as well.
Yeah,
but I remember hearing them saying that the issue with doing organic whiskey is it's not just your processes, but it's a process of like the cask you've already had before.
Yeah.
So if again, like they did a sherry cask organic whiskey, well that whoever you've bought the sherry cask from has to also be doing it organically, which just limits you down further.
Yeah, the chain gets, you have to be very careful with it. I think the introduction of blockchain, and as that becomes more widely used and things by people, and that'll probably help with making people comfortable or happy doing it and claiming organic, and then not having someone come back a bit and say, actually, no, look, we've looked into it. No, you haven't. So I think blockchain would be a great way of tracing where things have come from and making it easy to look at their practices. And there's something about Oloroso casks not being able. I think so. If anyone knows Single Cask Nation, I think Mick I know has come across them before. I'm sure you commented on something I shared about them. They're owned by the Jewish Whiskey Company, I think, is their parent company in America. And I'm pretty sure that there's something about not being able to use. I don't think Oloroso or sherry casks are kosher or something as well. So it's not.
I can't remember. But I know McKeand is supposed to be pretty organic as such. Because funny enough, we tasted that and someone came straight back within a couple of minutes and said, well, organic this, organic that. But if they're not doing this and they're not doing that, it's not organic. But as far as I'm aware, they are as well. They're pretty thorough with it. But yeah, as you say, it's a very funny situation to say organic and then someone can come along and say, well, you do this, so you're not.
You've got to be, well, like Che nailed it there. Like it needs to be the right way, the whole way up the chain. You have to be.
It's got to be, otherwise you're not any one little thing and you're not actually organic.
Right. How's everyone else getting on with this? Any tasting notes or anything, or any more questions before we might move into the Prestige?
I was going to say it's a good one actually, because I've tried a few rum casks and it's one of the heavier ones. I went with the heavier rum casks. I get some of the spices like you get out of a sherry cask as well, and the light ones that are, well, excuse my language, half-ass casks. You get a little bit of pineapple and a little bit of sweetness, and that's it. You know what I mean? If you get a real rum cask, it's heavier than that, isn't it? And that's what this is.
Sorry, go on.
I agree. I'm not really big on rum casks, but this one is one of few I tasted that's really rich. It's easy to pick out the different notes, and it's very fruity. It's heavy on the fruit, and I like that a lot.
Yeah, good. Well, yeah, fruity for sure. I think because you've got our spirit character is all about fruit. And then rum, you're going to get a load more of that come through. It's all rum, just pure esters, which are fruity notes and things there. So yeah, perfect. Right. Well, if that's all right, time to move on to the Prestige. If we're all okay. And while I'm doing that, I'll say the other part about sustainability, or I don't know if it sort of qualifies for it, but it's in that area at least. Our bottle stoppers, that our tops, we've got two different types. We've got the wooden ones that you can see on our seasonal range and our core range whiskies, and then these metal ones here. The wooden ones are made from the ends of discarded bits of cask. So when we cooper 200 litre barrels down into 30 litres, for example, we chop the ends off, and you end up with all this extra wood. So that gets turned into and from other bits, with casks that we just got rid of, and before chucking them on the burn pile, if we can't sell them elsewhere, will get turned into stoppers. And then the metal ones are from cask hoops that then get melted down and then recast into bottle stoppers at the top. So even these other little things that we just repurposing things that we have rather than just discarding them, we use that, and a larger cost than just getting bottle stoppers sort of sent in en masse from a producer in plastic or whatever they might be. Right, so Prestige, we're just getting this one open. Hopefully I can do this more quickly than the last. Easy. Prestige, I don't know what the term would be for this. So this is our champagne cask whiskey, but obviously you can't call things champagne cask because champagne hasn't been in a cask. It's the wine that goes into the wine that makes and becomes champagne. It's those casks that we have used for this. So I'll just pour myself a bit here. Right, and I've
still get the distillery DNA on this as well.
Yeah, well, you should be able to find part. It should be present, but whereas in the seasonal whiskies, it's supposed to be like one of the main characters, but in the moments it needs it plays more of a supporting role. Is how I would describe it. So the main show of the moment ranges would be the wood, but all that the previous contents of it. I've got another 2 pictures here just to show you of this one. Here we go. My little screen covers up half of the name of the champagne producer that we've got here, but hopefully people can see enough to work out that this is from Philipponat champagne producer. Not one that I've come across because I've only ever had champagne that's come off of the supermarket shelf. I think I'll say very nice, I'm sure, but things like Veuve Clicquot and Bollinger, which I think is sort of a bit further up the scale. From what I'm told, Philipponat, probably how to say it, is further up that scale, and then some. So again, same as the Caribbean, you can see the picture on the left, metal plaque, your numbers, the batch numbers, and then your individual bottle number on it. It comes from, so here we can say Philipponat. Hopefully, I should have put these pictures the other way around, because if you've got your 5 little windows on the side, you won't be able to see that actually it highlighted in yellow on the map on the right hand side is where the Champagne region is, and that is where Philipponat are. They've got their vineyard, from what I've read, is a relatively rare sort of phenomenon for the area, and they've got 45-degree incline, pure chalk ground and things there, very, very good for growing wine. But where they are in particular is all south-facing slopes, so and no hills or shade or anything in the front of it. So from dawn until dusk, bathed in sun, which means very good for obviously growing grapes. Here we can see the product sheet. I was looking for that then. So the primary casks that have been used in this. So you've got first fill ex champagne. No, just a little wink at the word champagne there, but I'll just keep saying it from now. So first fill ex champagne, 225 litres. Second fill, 250, and then third fill at 250 again. The whiskey that is in this is between 11 and 14 years old, and I think at the bottom it says where they are. So yeah, so about 60% of it will be 11 years old, and 40% of it will be roughly 13 to 14 years old. And again, this one is 46.1% ABV, which I've not actually had an answer on, because on why our seasonals are designed in the lab when Angela's putting all the cask recipes together to be presented at 46.1%, whereas the moments their ABVs will vary. So the fact that this is 46.1% ABV, I would hazard a guess that is actually just a coincidence, but it could very well be the case that it's been sort of made to that, by design, or any water that might have been added afterwards, for example. Perhaps Angela just thought that it happened to work best at that level. Anyone tried much in the way of anything claiming to be a champagne cask before? Who was it that got in trouble for saying champagne cask a while ago?
The only one I've ever seen is the Akantoshin, but I've not tried it.
Was it Bunnahabhain?
Bunnahabhain,
yeah.
Wasn't it Teeling?
No, it was Bunnahabhain.
Bunnahabhain.
They had a 30-year-old champagne finish, and it says it on the label, and they got trouble with it.
That's it. They got in trouble, yeah.
But there were only 120 bottles, so I think they got away with it because it was a very special release.
Okay, yeah. I think
it was good.
Just told not to do it again. It was what I can imagine a 30-year-old Bunna, whatever cask it might have been in. Name approved or not, I imagine would have been rather tasty indeed. Yeah.
I think Teeling had a white wine cask, some Riesling or something.
Okay.
And that went down really well, but it was nothing like a champagne cask or something. I think Ben just wrote in the chat that Aaron could use.
Right. I'm not sure I saw the Aaron one. Yeah. I've seen the Aaron Amarone that I think Che mentioned earlier. I'm sure other people have seen it about, but I've not actually tried that one yet. Be keen to. I mean, if anyone's got a bottle of that and wanted to do a dram swap, I'll be very keen on trying. Feel free to send me a message afterwards, or on Twitter or anything, or in the CO chat on Discord. I'll be keen to see what it's like. I probably should just go and buy a bottle, but if anyone happens to have one, I'd take it. So with this, notes wise, with this, I get like toasted brioche or toasted bread. Like with it is a bit more nutty to it, a bit far more nuts than the others might have had. Still a bit of that character coming through, but yeah, I feel like I can get the wine influence to it at all. There's a dry part of sort of halfway between the palate and the finish, I think, for me. But let me just remind myself of it.
Have you ever had that wine from the Jura, which is like, I can't remember what it's called, but it's like a very sort of almost strawy sherry type white wine? It reminds me of that.
No, I've not had that one. I need to get into wine a bit more. I think it's a fraction of the price of a bottle of whiskey. That's probably the first reason I should get into it. But yeah, I need to learn a little bit more about it. I think I went through a phase a little while ago of really getting into reds, but then just I don't like the thing sticking to my teeth that much, and like red just always seemed to do it, and it's not quite my jam. But I'd love to do a wine course or something, or just like a 1 day course, just so I can understand a little bit about any of the language or terminology around it. And on the subject of sort of terminology, so the grapes that are used for Filipponese wines are from Premier and Grand Cru vineyards, which I believe, although it's been a while since I've double checked to remind myself, but I believe are the top 2 designations you have for wine making, sort of classifications, wherever your fields might be. If anyone wants to chime in and tell me that I'm wrong, please do. I won't take any offense. I like to learn a lesson whenever I can.
So do you have any idea which type of grapes they used, like Chardonnay or?
I don't, but that's the sort of thing that I probably could do with knowing. So I'll find out. I'll find out and let you know, Luna, because actually to so that I can answer that in the future, I'll look into that. Let me just got some notes on my.
I thought all champagne was Chardonnay, but yeah.
Right. Well, I mean that's good enough for me, Luna. If you take that, yeah. Right. Yeah, we'll say Chardonnay probably for the most part. Maybe, generally speaking, I think is a good thing to say to try and cover yourself a little bit. Yeah. Generally speaking, I think it's Chardonnay. but I'll confirm. I could probably find out just by looking at their website. But I'll do that afterwards. So if you excuse me for 2 seconds, I'm just making a note of that question.
I know it says there's three varieties allowed. Oh, there's a weird echo.
Usually Pinot Noir, Chardonnay if it's champagne.
Okay, so that's another confirmation we think for Chardonnay there.
And Pinot Noir.
And Pinot Noir.
And Pinot Noir and Pinot Noir. Okay, brilliant. Well, there you go. This is what's so great about doing these tastings, and I love doing the tastings on Zoom rather than we have to do so many on YouTube and Facebook and things and streaming stuff. And this community coming together and helping people and giving a good bit of learning done. One of the best parts about Zoom, I'd say. So, anyone have any particular notes, or has there been anything in the chat perhaps that's come in tasting note wise?
Nicola wants to give you her notes, so I will look on the chat while she's giving you hers.
I wrote down 3 words when I tasted it, and it was wood, red, yeast. So when you said all those like bready notes, like that's exactly what I got. It's like that warming. But there was a yeast note, which is the kind of, I suppose, the maltiness and stuff. But really good.
Yeah.
Really,
On the back
really
of
nice.
that, Ben said he poured it an hour ago, had a small sip. It now tastes very different. Jamit Mick said, not tried this before, but liking it, spicy and warming. Charlie said the honey notes run through them all. Omar asked, where does your water come from?
Yeah, so it all comes from a big, I believe the term for an underground water source is an aquifer. Looking for a nod or two, yeah. So a big aquifer right where we are, basically, an enormous thing. If you look at the map of where it is, it's huge. I think it's called the Val Bosson or Val Bussen aquifer underneath us. But whatever its name is, yeah, big underground water source right where we are. When we were in the Brooks distillery, which is I think about 10 or 15 kilometers away from where we are now in the Gravity distillery, we pipe the water from that original place to the Gravity distillery. I think so. We pipe most of it's downhill. Obviously, sustainability is important to us. You don't want too much energy for pumping things around, of course. But yeah, so we when we moved from one distillery to the next, we made sure that the water source was the same. But yeah, I want to say, Omar, that the Val Burson aquifer, but whatever it's called, it's almost underneath our distillery's feet. Which will be, hundreds of years old, I think, by the time it actually comes back to the surface. Lots of snow melt, lots of time spent underground being filtered by one thing or the next, and then back up to the streams for us to use. But
Another couple of notes that are coming through. Green hazelnuts as well with chalky
Yeah, I get
notes
nuts.
from Luna.
Definitely.
A lovely touch of salt right at the end of the finish from Mick, and he agrees with the hazelnuts. Ben said he's pretty sure you can have Pinot Noir champagne. The Jura grape, Richard's saying the Jura grape is Sauvignon. Is that right, Richard? Not to be confused with Sauvignon. So, Rich, what can you go into a little bit more then? Because that's the first thing I do, just confuse them.
It's called, I guess it's pronounced Savignan, so it's just spelled slightly differently, and it's pretty much only from the Jura region, but it's a really distinct flavour. The first time I tried it, it was like, I was the same as Richard, like white wine didn't interest me, and then I drank that and I was like, okay, white wine can be really interesting. It's like straw, like really rich, kind of golden straw. It's almost on the kind of sherry spectrum, but not as dry. But yeah, really interesting white wine. So maybe that can be the next cast finish, Richard.
Yeah, we'll see. Yeah, well, as long as we can remember how to say Savignan. Savignan. Yeah, well, I'll pass that back. But yeah, we'll look into that.
Luna said she lives in a wine growing region and they make champagne from all kinds of grapes. They have to call it method why do I keep on having to say these words? Method Champenois, but they are Riesling or even red champagnes. Okay. And I'm not going to read any more messages out.
Did you just say, sorry, that there were red champagnes around?
So basically it's red sparkling wine, yeah. So they use the local wine that they grow here, It's a very dark, heavy red wine, and they make basically sparkling wine out of it. So.
Oh, awesome! Yeah, never knew.
And it's méthode champenoise, I think. I think my French is not that good.
And we'll have a go if you want.
Stop it.
Also, this is not recommended, but if you get a really sort of light Southern French wine, red wine, and put it in a soda stream.
Oh, okay, yeah. I think
I've tasted it. It's very nice.
I think have it your way, Rich. I think is as we hopefully most of us will say, there's only one right way to drink whiskey, and that's however you please. And I'm sure that's the case as well for wine. So
I've never soda streamed a whiskey, but there's always a first time.
Well, I mean, you can. Why not? The better the ingredients you use, the better an end product. So if you fancy something, if you like things that are soda streamed, why not have a go? Report back to us and let us know if you ever do. Because I'd be interested. It might even make me buy one of those things. If I enjoyed it, I think I definitely would. What large? I think in Japan, I can never remember what the name is now, but like a miso. No, that's a soup. But in Japan, there's a big culture of after work having whiskey and water as their long drink, which is a third whiskey, 2/3 water, and that is it. So that, but effectively with fizzy mineral water, I guess would be how I've always thought soda stream is. I think that might be all right. They might like it over there, especially a good place to test the market would be there.
I'm not talking about watering it down though. I'm just talking about carbonating the whiskey. Very different.
Right.
Thing.
Oh no, is that what a soda stream does? I thought a soda stream like almost just added carbonated water to.
No, so whatever liquid you put in, it carbonates it. So if you put wine in, it would I mean, you're not supposed to, but like don't go and break your soda stream. But what's his name? That chef Heston Blumenthal did it. He soda streamed, I think it was Blue Nun or something, and then gave it to people in Canary Wharf and was like, "Do you like this champagne?" And they're like, "Yeah, it's amazing!" And it was just soda stream Blue Nun. So
sparkling whiskey's got to be a report back, Rich.
Yeah, well, I'll have a go. I think it's worth having a go.
I feel like that better be recorded. That's going to be a YouTube one.
Cool. Anything else? Any other questions or notes or anything like that before we move into the final dram, the big meaty peaty one?
Nothing new in the chat, mate. So I'd move on to the next one if I was you.
Oh, let's do it. Right. Who has tried the Svensk Rook before? The core range Peter one, yeah. Few hands going up, yeah. So this is the Svensk Rook, not rock, but Svensk Rook, and even that is probably just there or thereabouts. / Amerikansk Eak, which means American oak, for anyone that hadn't worked that one out already. Rather large couple of clues in there, I think. So this is something. Oh, it's a new bottle actually to open here. Lucky me. This is, whereas the Svensk Rook from our core range, Swedish smoke, that means. This means Swedish smoke, American oak. And whereas that has a relatively, again, complicated or complex, I might say, cask recipe, where the core range one has Oloroso sherry casks, American oak, Swedish oak, and ex-bourbon casks in the mix. All of those casks for that one are, I think, no larger than 128 litres in size for the core range expression. This one is very different. This one is purely matured in virgin American oak casks. So this is between sort of 5 and 6 years old. But I think most of us here, I think, we've the amount of taste we've been on, everyone here would probably, if you put things into a virgin wood, I don't know if I want to say things age faster, but things develop more quickly because there's more property left within the wood to impart its influence on the liquid that's inside it. So at 5 or 6 years old is sort of the sweet spot for this. Did anybody try that absolutely filthy peated Ben Nevis, that Carmore Ben Nevis? Yeah, I see a cup, right. So that for me, that was and when I came and did that talk with all of us a little while ago, one of the questions that you asked, and I'll say I'm not very used to answering questions about myself yet. It's the first time I think I've had to do it. But you asked me about an Epiphany whiskey, I think I just got stuck on the Freud 10 because I couldn't think.
You panicked.
Anything else. Yeah, I couldn't think of anything. I was just because there's so many whiskies that have been epiphany moments. Like the Exceptional Grain was a massive one in my journey as well. But that filthy, dirty 4-year-old peated Ben Nevis from Carmore Strictly Limited was a massive epiphany whiskey for me. Even just as far as like age goes, and knowing that at 4 years old, something could just be like the perfect version of itself at that sort of age. And yeah, I'm not staking any claim that this is like the perfect version of itself. It's all subjective and everything. But that set me on a path where I realised that actually, you could pick up a 3-year-old whiskey here, a 4-year-old whiskey there. And in some cases, in many, hopefully, because it's been presented in that way, can be a brilliant experience. So this 5 years old, 200 litre ex-bourbon, or not ex-bourbon, sorry, virgin American oak casks with our smoky recipe. Our smoky recipe, we have 2 different types. We've got smoky and we've got extra smoky. And this has got a combination of both of those going into it. And I'm just going to pour myself a wee dram.
Just when you're saying about the Carmore Ben Nevis, have you tried the 6-year-old one they released?
No, I've got a sample of it, but I haven't tried it yet.
I was going to say, if you hadn't tried that, I would have sent you a sample because it's a really interesting thing.
No, I've got like 50 ml of it up there somewhere. That's because a mate of mine managed to get hold of all of those Carmore bottles and then just did a split of all of them. Yeah, I'm looking forward to trying it for sure.
Yeah, it's a really interesting one.
Yeah, I mean, it's just it's not. I didn't know that Ben Nevis even did like peated whiskey until I saw that, and now it's just I've seen like a few knocking around. Adelphi had something really good, a sherried peated one, I think, from there recently that I tried. That was I only had 30 ml of that from someone, but that was excellent. Yeah, so I mean, before I go, so I've got a few little things put together for this that we can have a look at. But has anyone got any sort of any notes that are jumping out of them now?
Peanuts.
Beg your pardon, Nick.
Oh, sorry. I was just gone 9 o'clock. We're all right now, aren't we?
I wonder if
peanuts.
Language.
I've tried the other rook, and I found it. Well, funny enough, I've only recently tried gin, and I didn't know what juniper tasted like.
Okay.
And I said conifer boughs on a fire. It doesn't have that. I'm getting more of a nutty thing, but I'm definitely getting like peanut butter, out of a jar. Never had that before. It's nice, don't get me wrong. I'm not complaining.
No,
but it's unusual.
I'll take that.
So do I.
I understand what Mick is, what Mick means, because when you take a spoon or a knife with peanut butter, you get the slightly smoky kind of thing on the end. And I'm picking up on that as well. I'm just not pinpointing it as peanuts.
It's very nice.
But I understand what you mean. To me, it was ash. A lot of ash.
Yeah.
You just put it so much nicer, Charlie, than Nick did.
That's exactly what it's like, I kind of got everything you said, and then when you said that, I was like, yes, that's exactly
no elegance in the southeast, I'm afraid.
Sorry, Mick. Ashy sort of tarry caramel, almost like that.
Dirty ham is what I'm thinking. It's that dirty ash, but it's like a ham. When it's like the sweetness of a ham. I don't need
like gammon.
But on a barbecue, if it was like a ham.
Yeah,
hot
shank
or something. Yeah.
Oh, I think they're walking around with a gammon steak slapped on me.
Yes, but dirty. It's like ashy.
I think it's dirty ham. The next T-shirt.
I can't do any more T-shirts. No more T-shirts.
I wrote it a bit earlier. It's like you enter one of these old smoking huts where they have been smoking ham and sausages for years and years, and you have the fat in the walls already, and this fat is burned, and you have this wood smoke that hits you when they are freshly smoking stuff. That's what I get from that.
That sounds. I've never been anywhere like that. That sounds like somewhere I'd like to go and do an overnight stay.
Put on the T-shirt.
Luke just says it nicer.
We've got a few comments coming through, Richard, which I'll read out. Let's have a look. Reminds me of when farmers burn their stuff in the fields. This is definitely the best of the evening. I get the juniper on this that I didn't get on any of the other drams, which is one of the core things you put up at the start. Still very spicy. Expect that's a distillate characteristic. Burnt peanut brittle. How do you know my dirty ham? Isn't dirty ham your nickname for ant? Dirty pork. And then Charlie put, I miss my mate.
At least that's dram number 5, Charlie. I think.
Yes.
You can certainly tell we're on dram number 5, can't you? The chat's taking a turn for the worse.
I'll pick one thing I picked up on there was about the juniper. So you wouldn't have found juniper in the other ones because we only use that in our peated recipe, basically. So whilst a peated cask or two might have been snuck into the recipes of some of the others here and there, you'd be hard pressed to find it. So with I'll show you what I've got. I've got only a couple of things here for that. I've just clicked through without sharing it, which is useless. So yeah, here we go. So this is on the right hand side. I think quite evident. That's the bottle itself. For those who have enough brightness on their screen, you might be able to see that on the box itself, although I can show you afterwards, you can see the sort of the outline, the silhouette of juniper branches, juniper twigs there. And I'll get into that in a moment. For now, I'll just explain who this gentleman is on the left. That is Harkin. He has been doing our smoking all of our barley and barley for, I think, for the better part of 10 or 15 years. What you can see him here, or where you see him, is in the front 25% of a big 30-foot shipping container, which is where we do all of our peating on site. And what you can see on the left of him is the furnace for it. And I flick through. This is the product sheet for it. You can see primary casks. I don't know if you can see my mouse moving here, but primary casks, New American Oak, because that is it. And here we've got a close up of Harkin and another gentleman who name I don't know. He could have just been a guest on a tour that day. I've got absolutely no idea. He's wearing some gloves, so he's obviously a professional. What you can see in the furnace there, you've got the wood at the bottom to get the fire going. Then you can see all these little logs and little cubes and things of peat. And then on top of that, you can see some branches, some juniper branches. The total mass of juniper branches that go into it makes up about 1% of the peat of whatever's burning and infusing its flavors and things into the barley. Only 1% will be dried juniper twigs. There are no berries, juniper berries involved in the mix. I've said a couple of times now that when they started, they found that there was nobody peating any barley, and I think still to this day, I'm quite sure that not even Viking Maltings, who we use for the rest of our barley, have set up any peating facility because there's just not the demand for it yet. There are lots of other distilleries already operational or coming online soon in Sweden, but no one with sort of the size of output that might create enough demand for a big business to do things. So we have to do it on our own. What we can see here at the top left is the first ever malting floor that the founders made themselves. So you can see just a couple of feet filled with filled with barley. Center, middle, at the top, the same picture from the beginning, where you can see our a dog kennel, a duck house, or whatever it might be, version of our peater. And on the right hand side, one of the earliest containers that we used for barley, for peating, sorry. And then bottom left, one of the earlier furnaces as well. The other two pictures are just where they had to come with this because I couldn't get them all on their own. That's when we first launched our, the first few whiskies of ours. There's some of the queues and people coming to get their bottles signed at the System Bolaget, or System Bolaget, sorry. Where the Swedish monopoly, basically, because you can't buy whiskey from anywhere else. What I have here, that's the distillery. 1, 2 secs. This is another distillery one. Hang on, bear with me so as I flick through because I'm zoomed up. This is the power station. This is just a quick 11-second one. This is where all the biofuel and biopellets go in to fuel the distillery. I'll let that one go. And then how do we stop? Can anyone tell that I'm a pro? That was a view from the top. I might come back for this. How do I make this smaller to make it easier for me to find the smoking thing? Oh, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll pause as we're here, and I've found it now. This is the drive down into the Bodas mines. So if you remember, I showed a picture earlier of the mine entrance. This is a drive down into it. This video was shot in 2019 by one of my colleagues, who's now, I think he was the first brand ambassador we had in the UK. He's now climbed the ranks very high. He lives in Italy with his partner, and he's the head of e-commerce basically for us, and I think we'll soon be taking a newer title as well. So the drive down, I think this is almost as long as a kilometre or 1.2 kilometres down from top to finish, or top to bottom. There are people that work down in this mine every day. That's their job, just to be down there. Some of them walk, some of them drive, but as we get down to the bottom, we'll see there's a fair few cars parked down there. Some of the benefits of the mine is that we can completely control, we've got to battle quite a lot against humidity, but we can completely control the environment down there. So it's kept at a constant temperature between 5 and 7 degrees Celsius, and a humidity of 99%. And although I've not had the pleasure, thanks to lockdown and COVID, of being over there myself, I'm told, and have it on good authority, that you get out of the car and you are just, slapped in the face with this angel share that just hangs in the air. If you can imagine 99% humidity and how much, flavor and, aroma will cling to that air. I can't imagine anywhere smelling quite as strong as this place might. And when you walk into a dunnage warehouse, I think anyone that's been there, you can tell, you can most of the time at least, you can get a sense of the whiskey in the air. But down here, it's just another level. That's Anders, that's our CFO. And I think this was the spiced room. So where some of the Oloroso casks, the Swedish oak and New American oak casks were. Now, I believe the next video, unless we make us watch that again, the next video should be the smoker. Here we go. So I showed you those couple of pictures a moment ago of that very small malting floor, which is basically a big box. This is on the right hand side, although we can't see a great deal of it. On the right hand side is where we have our maltings on site, and on the left, this shipping container is where we saw Harken sitting at the front of it, where the doors are open there. This is not one of those like really pretty things where you get to go on a tour of Speyside and the big pagoda roofs and really romantic settings and waterfalls in the background, or wherever you might be, views of mountains. This is a distillery set up by 8 engineers who, if it works, it works, and we'll worry about how it looks later on. So the barley gets malted over here and then taken up this chute and comes down into the shipping container. I think I think it's about 80 tons a year that we do ourselves. So it's a very small proportion in total of what we do. And one of the I probably should have put.
You can say anything as well.
Probably should have unmute. That was my colleague John giving us a small amount of useless commentary there. So now that you've seen that, I'll stop sharing this. I said we've got 2 smoky recipes for our smoke, our distillate, because we malt and peat our own barley, and I think we are one of fewer than 10 or 12 perhaps distilleries around the world that do that. I think there might only be a small handful in Scotland that do it, and then a few that are just elsewhere that have done it because they're probably on a farm themselves. Like Kilhoman do. I think Bowmore do Bowmore. I think malt and peat about 20% maybe of what they use in total, whereas Kilhoman I think are using all of it. Because we do things in such small quantities, we take our ppm up very high. So it's anywhere between 60 and 65 ppm, which is that's right up there, as the French say, I'm sure. but that doesn't end up in the whiskey itself. So what we end up with, we're sort of making almost like a concentrate of peat and smoky flavors. So we, in our smoky recipe, in our rook recipe, the distillate itself, it will be a mash bill basically. So it's all malted barley that go into it, but it will be around 23 or 25% of that batch going through will be peated barley, and the remaining barley will be unpeated. So that 65, doesn't translate all the way in to the whiskey itself, because we've just made something really smoky so that we can use a small amount of it. And it just, I think for on the business side, I think it was just, a clever workaround, I guess, rather than, setting up an enormous maltings at your own site, and then, the actual work that goes into making everything. For extra smoky, the proportions are doubled. So it's basically anywhere from 46% to 50% of the barley that goes through in a peated run will be smoky barley. And that's it. So that's it. And I will say, I probably should have said earlier, although I think I might have sort of half spoken about it at the very beginning. One of the reasons for using juniper in there wasn't necessarily to, this is the profile that we want to achieve. It was about trying to have, something different, something that made Sweden and us being the first people to do it sort of stand out. There was no sort of regulation about what you could or couldn't do. It's basically a lot of it based around, at least in Sweden anyway, a lot of it based around sort of tradition around the world and views on it there. They tried 4 or 5 different extra ingredients, and then landed eventually on using juniper branches. The reason that they even considered using that to begin with is there's thousands of years of history of people in and around Scandinavia using juniper twigs whilst curing fish or meats or whatever they're doing for the winter season. So to put some flavor into that food that they're curing, they would throw juniper twigs onto the fire to do it, and they've been doing that for millennia. So there's history and heritage involved in there. There's a Swedish stamp. They didn't just want to be another distillery that, another Scottish style whiskey that happened to be in a different country. They wanted to do some things that made it our own, basically. So that's why juniper's introduced into it. So if you've got, Mick, sorry, you thought you could find a bit of juniper in there. I think you might have said which you couldn't in the others. Is that right, or in the core?
Yep, no, I'd agree with that. And I must admit, the Svensk book that I tried first time, the juniper, which turned out to be juniper, which I didn't know at the time, was very, very strong. And fun enough, we were on another tasting, I think it was a tweet tasting, and that same flavour came up, and I mentioned it in Claire Vokins. I said, "Oh, that reminds me of a Mackmyra," and she said exactly the bottle that I was thinking of. And I think it wasn't the Rook. Was it on the beginning with K? I'm not even going to try and pronounce it. I can't remember, but we were both thinking exactly the same whiskey, and it was definitely Mackmyra that come to mind. So that's really stuck in my memory.
Yeah. So the Rook, I think I've described that a few times. I think you might have touched on it earlier bit, but like campfire in the rain, like a wet smoke almost. And I always thought that was
different, very different.
Whereas this, I don't get that wet smoke in here at all.
No. It seems lighter.
Yeah, well, I get heavy, like tarry notes, like from the distillate perhaps, and then the smoke is not quite as refined. I don't know about.
It's just not as strong. It's still a nice whiskey. Don't get me wrong, but I know what I expected when I tasted this, because I tasted the other one, and it's nice that it's different because it's meant to be. If you know what I mean.
Yeah. Well, so this. I think I don't know how many batches we are in of this now. This isn't a seasonal whiskey. This is sort of, I think, it classed in one of our like limited runs or something, but it's something that's done very well. So we're going to keep doing it. So it's not going to be called a core range whiskey, even though it is just going to keep coming out batch after batch until maybe it sort of earned its stripes, and we would do it. I think I don't know what it is about the market and the taste in Southeast Asia, but we sold 5,000 bottles of this to Thailand a few months ago, because apparently the people in Thailand just go nuts for it. So yeah, Absolutely, no idea. I couldn't tell you anything else about that deal, but I know that we sold a lot of it to them.
Well, to be honest, I think it's an alternative to peat. And you've got the peat question now, haven't we, about sustainability and the environment and the rest of it. And some people say they wouldn't miss it if it was stopped. Others would say, well, I'd stop drinking whiskey if it was stopped. Not my personal opinion, but this is an option, isn't it? Especially the first book being stronger. I can see people getting into that side of it if it had to go that way.
I think there's an interesting debate there to be had or discussion now about sustainability with peat as well.
Yeah.
So we use the very top layer of peat, which is sort of white peat. It can be called, which is something that doesn't take as long to replenish itself, I guess, or to become there. So we're not going 2 or 3 layers deep and getting so, because quite a lot of distilleries and quite a lot of operations will have a proportion from down here, a little bit from up here, a little bit from up there, and they'll chuck it in at different times, or they'll use it in different quantities. We only use that top layer, that white peat, which tends to get, it depends on where you're getting your peat from, the characteristics it will have, but generally speaking, sort of more smoky than I don't know what the lower down levels from Sweden would be like, in our region.
Be interesting.
Less medicinal.
But yeah. Well, I read an article that they were saying on Ireland they thought they had years of peat left, and they did a survey or something, and there was a lot less than they thought.
Well, I keep seeing things like that pop up.
Yeah, I don't know the truth of it, but
yeah, I think some people see it, and then other people say, "Oh, no, that was a wind up," or I think I saw it come out on April Fools at one point, but then I saw another one come out that was miles away from anything like that. But people said so. I think it's something that needs to be looked at, I guess. But I don't want to comment too much on it because I'm not an expert.
No,
I can't weigh in too much on it. But I think it's good that people are wondering whether or not we should be doing it forever. But if there wasn't, I'm a big peated whiskey fan. I think if someone said, "What would you want to drink more of the rest of your life, peated or unpeated?" If I had to choose, gun to my head, it would be peated whiskey. But then if you look at the shelf behind me, I think probably 10%, 15% of that is peated. Even though that is, I might argue like my favourite type of the two. So I think if it did ever disappear, I think we'd be okay. But I hope it doesn't. But then I'll couch it by saying I hope that we find sustainable alternatives to it so that we can still get that flavour. Because my life would be lesser without it.
What about these scientists that say they can age a spirit to taste like a 15, 20-year-old whiskey in a matter of seconds?
Yeah. So the matter.
I don't know if any of you have heard of that. It's quite interesting, but unusual.
I'm looking at Ryan Clark here, basically on this one. So Tom Jacklin, Whiskey Shorts, obviously, big CO man. We did we had a blind tasting with him a few weeks ago. And it was a couple of our local mates, and Ryan was there, and who's obviously a mate, but a not local mate, I should say, part of a crew. And Tom had snuck in something that was one of these like super artificial aged whiskies, and we all tried and happily nodding along. I was thinking it was a bit Lectrigy, which is Lectrigy's my jam, by the way. That's my favorite whiskey, full stop. And there was something to it. There was like a bit of punk to it. There was some meatiness to it. I'm sure it was Ryan. There was a bit of peat. Was it a bit peated? Was it a bit smoky? I think.
Yeah, definitely.
I don't know if that's just me, but I'm losing you there, Ryan.
Yeah, I've lost him as well.
Okay, that's the perfect time. Yeah, I'll bring you off the bench. And, yeah.
I'd like to try it myself.
Oh, I thought you might have been back there. Ryan, let us know if you come back. I'd love your take on it. But basically, that whiskey, it wasn't a whiskey, sorry. But it wasn't 3 years and everything like that. But that to me, if I would challenge anyone to have that in the lineup and say, hang on, this isn't whiskey. It did taste like whiskey.
Oh, that's interesting. So I've tried any.
It did, yeah. I think it doesn't come with the romance that a 3 years in a cask will have.
No.
But yeah. The Svensk Amerikansk Ek then. Any like notes, questions, anything general, whether or not it's about?
In the chat, Richard, people are putting lists. They're listing them in their favourite order.
Yeah,
so we've got John Haslam was Caribbean, Scordated, Prestige, Ek, Rook for him. It's all over the place, to be honest.
Yes.
Charlie was Caribbean, Scordated, Prestige, Svensk, Ek, Svensk, Rook. Then it was Omar was Ek, Rook, Prestige, Scordated, and Caribbean. It's literally all over the place. It's
that's good. That's good.
Frank, Svensk, Rook, Svensk, Ek, Prestige, Caribbean, Scordated. So yeah, I mean it's all over the place, to be honest. They're all everyone likes them, just all in different orders, to be honest.
Yeah, awesome. Good to hear. I think it's when you've got something that's varied and it's not just one that's like run away with everything. But that when one runs away with things on all the tastings that we do, and then there's that one that's obviously come in fifth, but that doesn't mean that it wasn't someone's second favourite or you know it wasn't around there. You know, somebody didn't like it, but it's always sad to see when there's one like training at the end. I feel like sympathetic towards it. I don't know what it is. But it's nice. It's nice a varied selection amongst of favourites of people. Ryan, hello, welcome back. Yeah, that was.
Sorry, mate. What a time to cut out, eh?
Yeah.
Brilliant. I look internet, eh?
Yeah. But what did you think about that non-whiskey?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a massive smoke fan, like real peat fan, but I thought that was incredible. I mean, they just got everything onto it. Was it the Abomination? It was I'm sure it was Abomination, something like that. I was just trying to see if I got my notes in this book, but it's in a different book.
Yeah, no, Abomination, that was it. I couldn't remember the name, so thank you for that. Yeah. So that's good. I mean, I got, give that a try, guys, I'd say, it's worth it. I feel like part of me doesn't really want to support it, but then another part of me thinks, well, let's just see what flavours can be achieved. So long as they don't try and claim that they're one thing, when they're another, that's fair enough. As long as people know what they're buying when they buy it. I
think they were quite open that it was sort of pressure treated or something like that to really sort of infuse with the cask, which I thought was quite interesting.
Yeah. I think transparency. If transparency is there for them, anyone else getting into that game, as long as they're transparent about it, I don't care. Come and join in with the rest of us, 100%.
Less divisive than terror, isn't it?
Let's do that. Let's do the terror.
Don't go there. Sorry.
I mean, that's more or less it, I guess, for tonight. I mean, if anyone's got any questions, happy to hang around for a little bit anyway and have a drink. But if anyone's got any questions that they wanted to know, Mackmyra based or the bottles that we've had, feel free to fire them in or not.
Thank you, Richard.
You've got some giveaways to do before we leave, though, haven't we?
Yes, yeah, that's right. Yeah, so thank you for reminding me of that. So yes, we've got some giveaways. So well done for hanging around until the end. Although some of these giveaways you've already possibly received, not the giveaway itself, but the answer.
The way to win it.
So let me just remember what it was because it was some time. So
it was 5 brands ago.
Yeah. On the bottom of your tasting bottles, your sample bottles, there might be a letter written on there. Obviously, we're all lucky that this has been able to try it, but if you're super lucky, you'll have a letter on there. If you have a P or a G, there's a P.
Oh.
Yeah,
Ben's got a P.
Mick, you've smashed it.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Unbelievable. I never win anything. Fantastic.
Thank you. Something.
So we'll start with any other P's.
Anybody else got a P?
Could be on any one of them. No.
Anybody else?
Helen and Andy, did they not win anything this time?
Oh, what? No, I was waiting.
Oh, what a shame.
I was absolutely convinced that they'd have all of the P's and G's would be on there.
Well, there was 3 P's.
There's 3 P's. So we've got 1 P.
But there was 26.
I got a B. Is that
So we must have some people who
Oh,
aren't
we need
here
some photo proof.
who may have it. It could be on any one of your bottles. It's only on one bottle out of the whole 5 that you've got.
So
you need
Ben's
to
got
check
to
'em all.
pay. Bless him.
Yeah, it's Ben and Mick, I think, are the only two here still now.
Woo, woo!
So,
Have them.
two
So,
other people.
do you want to tell them the prices, guys?
Help the
I'll
man in
let
misery.
you
Yeah.
do it, Richard.
So Ben, you're the lucky winner of a whiskey pen. Yeah,
You can
nice. It's great for taking notes, and you're tasting notes and everything down
And
there.
so cool as well.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you very much.
Not McKyra, so they're off brand completely.
No,
but-
is that a Douglas Lang? Is that Rock Island? I love a bit of Rock Island. If that was a Douglas Lang Rock Island one,
Yes.
I think it was.
Oh, there is a Rock
there is a
Island.
Rock Island. He's Rock Island, yeah.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah, that's right up my street. So happy for it to be that level of ours. But yeah, well done. Congratulations, Ben.
Mick,
And
Mick.
Mick.
Oh my God.
You've got the coolest thing. It's small in size, but I just think it's one of the best things I've seen you guys have in the auctions and stuff that you've been doing. And that is one of Frank's. It is Frank, isn't it? It's Frank's wooden pen.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah.
I have seen these. Thank you very much.
That they're just amazing. So
Oh, that's fantastic. Thank you.
The best
I never
part
would
about-
anything. I want something.
Best
brilliant.
part about it, Mick, is it's only $19.99.
So I'll get it at half price. That's a result.
That's it. What you guys have actually won is the ballot to buy it.
Yeah. Brilliant. Thank you.
And there's just one last one that any of you
that's
can
it.
win,
And
to be honest.
that was we've got to announce something, right?
Well, yeah.
Oh,
one
wait,
more
no, we've got
pint.
one more giveaway in the
Got
middle.
the one more giveaway, which any of you can win. It's just the first person to get the right answer, to be honest.
Okay,
So, do you want me to do this one, Rich?
Well, go on, mate. I'll say, I'll say
Okay,
you
so-
give the answer. So,
We were given a sample of the Bork Sav. Is that how you say it, Rich?
yeah, Bjork Sav.
York Sav.
York Sav, right? So, you can win this sample now. It's the first person to shout out the right answer. How many? The right answer. How many points would you get on Scrabble for the name of this whiskey? First person to shout out the right answer.
I'll take the Glencairn. Thank you.
I'll say up and down. I'll say, go on. Throw a number out.
20.
Hang on. Carry on. Who said 20?
Me, Omar.
22.
24.
Who said 22?
Charlie. 24. Charlie wins.
Oh, Charlie. Woo-hoo.
Well done, Charlie.
Thank you. I really wanted to try that one.
There you go. Yeah, nice.
That's good as well. It's a nice one.
It's a lovely one.
Well done.
So I hope you all enjoyed it.
Yeah.
And we will see you. I think next Sunday is Chakiski, which is a bit different because it's the chocolate that's designed to go with whiskies from all different regions. So again, we're going to do a little Q&A with them, and I've sent some of the little tins for us to give out as gifts and things like that. So we'll work something out on the night. So if you can join us for that, that'd be brilliant as well. But
Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your time. Hope you have a great week at work, if that's such a thing.
You enjoyed it.
And
Maybe this makes tomorrow morning feel better.
yeah, or worse in some cases. Thank you guys so much, and we'll see you again soon.
Thank you.
Cheers, guys.
Thank you, everyone.
See you later.
Thanks.